And we are live. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today, I'm probably going to stream for about an hour. Really want to keep pushing ahead on my Gallowdark scenery set. We are so close to the end. This project has been going on for a month and a half at this point. The light is at the end of the tunnel, and today we're going to be doing some oil washing. Before I get into that, though, I do want to show my progress. There have been some steps that I did not have a chance to film that are kind of key for setting up all of this oil washing that we're going to do today. Also, I'm trying out a new camera angle so that hopefully we'll be able to get the scenery a little bit more in focus instead of doing the straight top down from about 18 inches or so off of my desk. I've got an angle a little bit closer, but it's on a diagonal. So we'll see how that works out. Let me know in the chat or in the comments if you're seeing this after the fact how it looks. So first, I kind of want to just show what we did here to get to this point. So on all of my walls, I did two types of chipping. So in this example, I used the AK interactive chipping fluid, which works similar to the hairspray technique. So I had all my base color for the walls done. So I did the spray, two-tone zenithal spray. Went ahead, did some dry brushing, and then I sealed all of that in with, what did I use? I think it was a gloss varnish, maybe satin, probably gloss. But anyway, once that gloss varnish dried, sprayed the chipping fluid through my airbrush, let that dry really quickly, like we're talking 5-10 minutes, just so that it's no longer wet to the touch. And then I went in with two enamel colors, so Streak and Grime from it's either AK or MIG. They both do it. And then Engine Grime. So there's two different colors that were completely covering this. And then once that had about a half an hour to dry, and I do want to point out, in a lot of their tutorial videos, they always talk about, acrylic chipping fluid and then acrylic over top. You absolutely can do acrylic chipping fluid and then enamel. That worked totally fine for me. But once that enamel layer was dry, went ahead and flooded the entire surface of this with water, and then went in with a brush and just kind of like jabbed at all of that paint. And then that's how you end up getting this chipping effect all in the recesses of the walls and everything, here on the center pillar as well. Now, I did about half of the walls that way, and then I said to myself, this is taking forever, and this project is already going on too long. I just want to be done. So with these walls, I went ahead and did sponge chipping, which is super fast. You just squirt out a little acrylic paint on your palette, get an old piece of sponge, whether it's like kitchen sponge, or if it's from a blister pack, dip it in there, get a ton of the excess off, and then you literally just lightly stab it all over the piece. So I did two colors. The first one was the chipping color. It's literally called chipping color, from AK. And then on top of that, I did a dry Rise of Rust. So the Rise of Rust was mainly concentrated inside the larger chipping color chips. which are kind of like a deep reddish brown. It's a really good base for rust. So these walls have their chipping done to look more rusted instead of just worn. And carried that through all over. Now, for the other base coats that I did after that, again, I was trying to get through this as quickly as possible. So I hit the bronze bits over here and the little Mechanicus sigils. I hit all of those with Molten Bronze by P3 from Privateer Press. It's a really good base for bronzes and golds. It's really great coverage. You almost never need more than one coat of it. Absolutely love it. And then the wires up top, I did in a blue from Citadel. It's slipping my mind which one it was. But just one coat of a light blue paint to kind of add some contrast to all of the browns that we have going on. For these lights, I alternated whenever they came in a pair. I did one red, one green, sort of like an on-off kind of thing. And then the smaller lights. Come on, focus. There we go. These smaller lights, some of them are red, which is just Blood Angel's contrast paint. And then some of them I did in yellow, like this, which it was a Citadel yellow. I can't really remember which one it was. But yeah, so nothing super crazy. I did not worry about highlights. I was literally just trying to get these done. Oh, the other thing I want to point out was all of these screens. So the idea here is once I'm done with all of the oil washing, I'm going to go ahead and use contrast paint. I think it's called like Carandus Green. It's a really, really transparent sort of light, almost kind of neon green. It's actually the same green that is in these light bulbs up top. So I'm going to use that over the screens. But so that I had some variation, I base coated the screens in different types of gray. So here is Corax White. I think this one was Ulthuan Gray, and then this one is some other kind of gray that's a little bit darker. And so a really fun tip for anyone who is doing scenery like this that has screens on it, and you don't want those screens to just be bare, but at the same time, you know, your freehand skill may not be quite where you want it. So the water slide transfers from Gunpla kits are amazing. So all of these little symbols and caution messages I got from Bandai transfer sheets. Their water slide transfers work the same way as the Citadel ones. So you don't have to do anything extra crazy. Just soak them in water, get them on your model, you know, squeeze the excess liquid off, hit them with some micro set, let it sit overnight, and then varnish it in. You're good to go. And I did that for the small screens as well as the larger screens. And even though these are technically, you know, for Gunpla, you know, from 2 feet away, 3 feet away, when this is on the table, you can see that there's text on the screen and it will look really cool, but no one's gonna really be able to read, you know, that this says Gundam on it, you know, in size 2 font. So that's a really great tip. Definitely look for water slide transfers from, you know, other hobbies and manufacturers. That can be a really, really big help when you're doing scenery. I've seen companies that do water slide transfers for like graffiti. If you wanted some graffiti like on the building or even, you know, on a spaceship wall. The other caps that close off these pillars have a lot of open space. You could totally use graffiti or imperial iconography on these walls. But once I got the transfers in, sealed those in with a little gloss varnish, I went ahead and sprayed all of this with gloss varnish. And the reason for that is to prep for the oil washing that we're doing today. So whenever you're working with oils over the top of acrylics, the type of finish will affect how your oil paint behaves. So if you have a matte finish, which is essentially really bumpy, you can almost kind of think of it as this paper towel. There's texture to it. So whenever you put oil paint over top of that, from the raised areas, you can move the pigment around with some thinner, but down in the recesses, your brush is going to be too big to actually get down in the microscopic crevices to move that pigment around. So you end up with what looks to be like staining. So you can get tide marks and that sort of thing, which you can, that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are definitely applications where that can be, what you're going for. Now, with a satin, so we move up a step, so it's a little less bumpy, but it's not perfectly smooth. You get less of the staining, and the capillary action increases. So the wash, the oil paint, will want to flow a little bit better, and it'll get caught in the recesses of your model. And now gloss varnish, which is what I did for this, which is almost perfectly smooth. There's almost no texture to it whatsoever. It increases that capillary action even further. So it will race into the crevices and it'll pull in the crevices, and very little of it will stay on your flat areas. Which for this, where there's tons of texture here, that's really what I wanted to go for. Alright, so what oil paint am I using? So I'm going with this Absalom 502 engine grease. And so I actually have some leftover from when I was working. This is what it looks like when you thin it down to a wash. And now when you shake this up, you can see it's kind of a sepia tone. And I have this actually really, really thin. So it's not quite a filter, but it's more thin than a wash. So it's not going to behave sort of like a traditional oil wash if you've seen some other creators. So what I wanted was the tinting effect of a filter, but I still wanted to get some shadow around things like rivets and so forth. So this consistency works great for me. For other people, oils are just so flexible. You don't have to use them that way. You can make this a little bit thicker, and it'll behave sort of like the traditional oil wash that people are kind of used to. You could go even thinner, lose the wash properties altogether, and just have a filter. And all you need to do to kind of play around with that is some mineral spirits. So this giant container I got from an art supply store. Where you get your mineral spirits from doesn't really matter. This happens to be odorless because my fiance, normal mineral spirits will kind of give her a headache. So I can use this, around her. She'll be totally fine. Unless you're spraying it. If you do end up spraying this through an airbrush, because you do need this to clean up oil paint and enamel paint, by the way. If you spray this through your airbrush, make sure you're wearing some sort of respiratory protection. It is dangerous to inhale this. You definitely do not want to huff paint thinner. Alright, so we're going to get started, and we're going to go ahead and mix up some wash. And so this just comes in a little tube. One thing I do want to note, you'll notice I have cardboard, and then I have kitchen tile on top of this. You want to protect your work surface. You know, if you're renting, you don't want an angry landlord. If you own your own home, you don't want an angry wife or spouse. Make sure you protect your work surface. But all we're going to do is squeeze a little bit of this out into the bottom of my glass container. And now these little glass containers, I believe I got these from just like a home supply store. So maybe it was at home. My fiance loves that store. I don't know if they have those across the pond in the UK, but they're pretty prevalent here in the US. And when you're putting your oil paint away, guys, make sure you clean it, because these little squeeze bottles can get kind of messy. Put that cap on right away so it doesn't leak anywhere. There is linseed oil in there, so if it's warm where you're using it, that oil will start moving. So seal that up really quick. And now I already have my recipe in my head. I use 5 pipettes of thinner to go ahead and mix up my pseudo wash, I'll call it. I haven't really thought of what I would call something between a filter and a wash, but for now, pseudo wash will do. And same thing with this, you don't want to spill this anywhere. Go ahead and put the cap on, and let's get this guy out of the way. And now we're just gonna mix this up. Now, if I had a bigger one of these, I would just use an mechanical paint stirrer. I'm kind of scared to use it in this flanged cup, because I don't know if it'll splash everywhere, so I'll just go ahead and mix this up by brush. It is nice to have 2 of these while you're working, so you see I have an empty one here, so you can keep your wash in one, and you can keep neat thinner in the other one, and use that to clean your brushes when you're done. But you just want to get this really mixed. You'll kind of want to move it around so you can see the bottom of the cup. Make sure you're breaking up all of the clumps of pigment. And so you can kind of see what I'm going for here is when I touch this to the side of the container, all of the paint just runs, all of the pigment rather, runs back down into the bottom of the cup, and there's just a slight hint of color that lingers on the side of the glass. And that's the consistency that I like working with my oil washes for this project. So, other thing, trusty little latex glove. This stuff will run everywhere, and it will get into your skin. It is very messy, so you want to have adequate protection. So I'm going to go ahead and take this old mix that I had and put that in there. And so these little jars are great for saving oil or enamel mixes, because typically you don't want to put this, well, you know, for these tubes, I couldn't put my leftover paint back in there. And then for anything that comes in a bottle, you might not want to mix, you know, your mixed paint and contaminate everything else. So these little jars are great for saving your leftover paint so that you don't waste anything. So now to actually apply this, I've got a medium-sized makeup brush. Any cheap makeup brush will really do, doesn't matter. And we just go into the pot, get the excess off, and we just slather this all over the place. And don't worry about it pulling right now, we'll handle the pulling later. We'll kind of let gravity do its thing, and then we'll come in and assist later on where necessary. The nice thing about this is you have a super long working time. So if you've never used oils or enamels before, if you're used to acrylics, like most wargamers, you know, acrylics will dry on you in a matter of seconds, and then you can't go back in and fix your mistakes. With oils, these things don't dry for like a whole 24 hours. Or correction, they will begin drying. They might be dried to the touch, but you can reactivate the paint with just a little bit of thinner on a brush, and then you can go and, you know, remove it if you need to. You can move pigment around. You can, you know, streak it and add all kinds of effects. You can stipple it. You know, whatever you want to do, you've got all the time in the world to make it happen. And then once you're done, you just gotta let it completely dry before you move on. And so we got that side nice and covered, and now we're gonna flip it and do the other side. And as you can see, it's dripping all over the place, which again, that is why we protect our working space. Another thing to mention, we are technically using toxic thinning material. So you know, if you're a brush licker, which is a bad habit anyway, you definitely don't want to lick your brushes with this stuff. You'll end up needing a trip to the hospital, which is no fun. So stop licking your brushes, definitely don't do this. And we are just getting this everywhere. You can kind of see with the capillary action, it's going into all of the crevices and it's running down. But on those flat surfaces, it's still kind of tinting the color a little bit with a nice little sepia tone. Which is awesome. It blends together all of the dry brushing highlights and all the weathering that we did. Just looks awesome. So now we're going to let gravity do its thing. We're just going to sit this here in the back while we start working on the next piece. And already you can see what I mean. Like, this stuff just goes everywhere. So protect yourself and your workspace. And actually, Jesus, already got some just, yeah, it literally will go everywhere on you. Just be careful. And again, guys, let me know if you like this new camera setup. Hopefully it's getting some better shots of the piece, a little bit, you know, clearer detail. Unfortunately, I am still in the dark ages recording-wise, and I'm working with 1080p webcams for this setup right now. The GoPro that I got over the holidays, I wasn't really satisfied with how it looked for the top down because of the fisheye lens. It has this sort of like weird distortion toward the edges of the shot, and the DSLR that we have, it's a Canon EOS Rebel. The Canon webcam utility that lets you connect it to your computer and use it as a webcam device within OBS, which is what I'm using to stream. They pay lock you into 720p. So even though the camera is capable of shooting in 4K, I just, on principle, refuse to pay Canon any more money after I bought this crazy expensive DSLR camera to like use the full features just because I wanted to plug it into a PC. So at some point, I'm gonna upgrade to 4K webcams, but until then, I was trying to see what I could do and get some better quality shots. So. I do also want to mention I am super excited. So ever since Warcry came out, I've always kind of been interested because being an older gamer, and by older I mean late 30s, I don't have as much time as I used to when I was younger, and so getting in a full game of Warhammer or Age of Sigmar is super, super hard. So when Warcry came around, I was like, oh snap, skirmish gaming is like where I'm at. I've kind of dabbled with a lot of skirmish games over the years, and unfortunately, a lot of those smaller companies, it can be either difficult to find opponents, or the company just folds. Wrath of Kings is actually a really great example. I went in on the Kickstarter on that, got like 2 full factions, great models, great system and everything, and cool mini or not, just decided to kick it to the curb. So, I've kind of been on the fence with Warcry. With Games Workshop, I wasn't necessarily worried about it going well. I won't say I wasn't worried about it going away. Games Workshop has definitely killed games before, but I just had other priorities. But for Valentine's Day, my awesome other half, Taritai, went ahead and got me the Heart of Gur, so the 2nd edition starter box for Warcry. So I have that actually being delivered today. I'm hoping by the time I'm done with this stream, it will be in our delivery lockers, and I'll be able to go run and grab it. But there will be some Warcry content coming soon. So once we get all of this Gallowdark scenery done, and we'll probably do a few battle reports, I'll be doing the Gur scenery, doing some killer trees, get some fantasy terrain going. That scenery set that they've got going for the Warcry stuff right now with the Gur scenery, it's great for any sort of fantasy, gaming. It doesn't have to just be, Age of Sigmar, Games Workshop products or whatever. You could even use it, in a sci-fi game. Just, maybe you're on a feudal, world where the technology level is relatively low. So it's very versatile terrain. Super stoked with how it looks and everything, so looking forward to that. And then we'll get some additional war bands going. Thinking, maybe like 4 or 6 war bands total, and get some battle reports of that going as well. So one thing to call out while I'm doing these, I am, as you can see, I'm just slathering this everywhere. And I don't care that it gets on the screens, because we can remove this later. So it literally does not matter. We just want to get this all over the piece, let it, soak in around all of the rivets, let it line all of our panels and everything, and let it tent the flat spaces. And so the cool thing with this is, even though, excuse me, it looks super dark in the jar when it's concentrated, when you put it on, it's more of a sepia tone. So it's a very subtle shift. It's not too far away in hue from where we were with our base coats on the wall. So you're able to still, kind of not alter the color greatly, but unify all of the highlighting and shadows that we had going, and it's just a really great color for this project. So a lot of people, they will turn to, burnt sienna, or darker browns, or even black, to do their oil washes. Don't sleep on some of those other colors. Definitely play around, pick the color that you feel would best work for your project. Alright, so once we do this last of these walls, we'll go in and we'll suck up any excess that we can see, and then we'll set those aside and then work on the next set. Probably need to mix up a new batch of our wash. I'm starting to run a little low. And once the washing stage is done, really all I've got left are the screens, and I'll probably come in with some very targeted enamels, like wherever there's burst pipes on the piece. I might put some muck and grime kind of like streaking out of those. And maybe do some rust streaks from some rivets on the rusted out walls. But then it's just pigment powder, seal it, and we're done. So the light really is at the end of the tunnel. We can see it. And this is sort of the, part of a project where I start to get excited. Starting a new project, especially, doing what amounts to 2 scenery sets worth of terrain all at once is super daunting. I've actually never done a project this big before in my life. And, there have been tons of vids out there where people show you, hey, here's how you can speed paint your Gallowdark terrain and whatnot, and like a lot of that stuff is totally awesome and really great advice. But I really wanted this terrain to kind of be something special, but at the same time, like, you know, not nitpick over every single detail. I'd be painting this thing all year. So I did kind of want to take my time. Alright, so let's kind of get ourselves cleaned up. As you can see, again, this stuff will get everywhere. Alright. Cleaned up. So now we're going to start from the back and we're going to soak up any excess wash. And so my brush is already loaded. It has a fair bit of thinner in it, so we'll just squeeze all of that out. And then we are just looking for obvious pooling. Can I get this to where you guys can see it? So you guys can see right in there, there's some pooling. We're just soaking that up with the brush and then dabbing it off on the paper towel off on the side. If you let that sit, you will end up with stains. But again, you could just reactivate the paint and make that go away. So any obvious pooling like that, we just want to go ahead and get rid of it. And the reason why we didn't go in and do this right away was to kind of just let gravity do its own thing. And all of that wash is going to run down, and a lot of it just gets absorbed by the paper towel, and then we don't have much to worry about. We could just go in and get, you know, the little bit that got stuck, and there's a washed piece. And now again, with oils, this will need to dry for like 24 hours minimum. You'll know it's dry when it's semi-dry, it'll look gloss. When it goes completely matte, that's when it's mostly dry, and then from there, I'll still give it 12 hours. Just to make sure, because wet oils have oils, and if you try and go over top of it with a acrylic paint, it's not going to work. Oil and water. So there's a trade-off for everything. We get ease of use, easy cleanup, and easy, correcting our mistakes. The trade-off, though, is the cure time is very, very long. With that being said, though, I wouldn't trade oils and enamels for the world. Now, if you've seen any of my videos over on YouTube, which, if you're watching this on Twitch, make sure you go follow me on YouTube, at JTS Wargaming, also on Instagram, same handle. But my channel over there, I've got some videos where I'm talking about enamels. And enamels work very similar to oils. The biggest difference is that they don't take as long to dry, which is awesome. So enamels are normally, dry and you're ready to move on like overnight. Again, oils just take way, way longer. And so, another thing I'll try to point out here, so you can kind of see on this gray screen right here, there's some wash that's kind of pooled down at the bottom. Now I can wipe that away right now, it's super easy. But if I had let that dry a little bit, all I had to do was come back in with some thinner on a damp brush, and that would have came right off just as easy. So this is almost idiot proof. It's so easy to work with these as long as you take the proper steps in doing so. And that piece looks good. This last one we did. The other great thing with this is you can move pigment around. So yeah, I picked up some excess, from over here. These rivets, I wasn't, liking the coverage. Just deposited right over there. Same thing, I felt around these cables needed a little bit more definition. Just whatever was in my brush did the job. That one's looking good. Alright, clean hands. And let's mix up some more wash. Now, sadly, I would love to be able to give you guys an exact, mix. All I can say, it's sort of like a large P shape of the actual oil paint that I'm putting in there, and then 5 of those pipettes of thinner for my consistency. Now, if you wanted more of a traditional oil wash, for the amount of actual paint that I use, I'd probably drop that to maybe 3.5 pipettes. But, again, there's pros and cons to that. If you use a thicker mix, you will spend more time on cleanup, but you will have, very stark contrast on your miniature, which can be good or bad depending on what you want. In fact, if I was doing something where maybe I didn't put as much visual interest into the model, like with all the chipping that I did and the rust work. So I really wanted, the definition of the model to pop, to make that the visual interest. I probably would have used a thicker mix. So, all your rivets and everything would like pop out at you, very, very stark contrast between your shadows and your high points. With this, I'm just going a little bit more subtle because I've put so much work in creating visual interest in other ways. And ultimately, this is the backdrop of the game. It's not... You want it to look good, but you don't want it to steal the show away from the miniatures. themselves. So, or at least I don't. It's your hobby how you want. But for me, I want the terrain to sort of be in the background. I don't want the terrain to be so loud and ostentatious that it takes away from the miniatures. Alright, that mix looks good. Even though I'm comfortable with the ratio, I still do that test where I check it on my glass. Right, but now we're working on the rusty pieces. But we're gonna do much the same thing. Just slather it on. And you can kind of see, we go from, white all the way up in the high points, through browns and oranges, and putting this, sort of light color shift over everything just kind of helps tie it all together. Kind of dulls that contrast down a little bit, which goes back to what I was saying about, you want the terrain to look good, but I don't necessarily want it to completely steal the show. I'm going to be using this as, background for like photos. Oh no, I just felt some wash hit my forearm. Went a little too ham. But yeah, I'm going to be, using this as backdrop for photos, doing some battle reports and stuff with it. And through all of that, the showcase of the shot should be the minis, not the terrain. Oh, and I didn't mention it before too. The other really nice thing with this color is that it works to shade everything that I have on here, from the bronze to the tan walls, the other metallics. Just one-stop shade for absolutely everything, which is awesome. So we'll let gravity do its thing, just like the last set. Now, with this being super light, it may not fill in all of the things like the grills on some of the vents and so forth, as well as a standard oil wash will. But for anything that I feel like it's too light, when I work with my enamels in the final steps, it'll be very easy to correct those. Just run a little streaking grime down in there. Again, you can take excess from one part of the model and move it where you need it. This stuff is super, super flexible. And I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I meant to. But when I was talking about the Aptalung oil paints, so the reason why that company, I chose that company, because there's, oil paints are, they've been around forever. You can get them from any art supply store. They'll normally have like, weekly coupons where like you can get like 50% off an item or whatever. So it can be really tempting to like go ahead and get artist oils, which by all means, don't be dissuaded from doing so. You could totally use a high quality artist oil, and I have before, especially like the Winsor Newton brand. Those work really, really well. But the Abtalung brand, they formulate their stuff specifically for miniature painters. So therefore, they don't use as much oil in their oil paints, which actually helps with the drying time. So by having less oil, it's easier for this to dry. Whereas if you were to use a standard oil paint, say for instance like a Winsor Newton paint, this stuff might take a week to dry. So the Absalom stuff, it's not that pricey. Their tubes are smaller than getting, an artist oil brand, but just the fact that you don't have to worry about having that extra oil is normally what you would need to do is use cardboard almost like a palette and squeeze out your oil paint on the cardboard and then just let it sit. And then the extra oil would leach out of the paint into the cardboard, and then you'd be able to go ahead and make your mixes. Abtalung just lets you skip all the nonsense and get straight to painting, which is amazing. So home stretch here, I've already done the majority of the set last night as sort of a test run, test out my colors, make sure everything was working the way I wanted it to. So after I do these last couple of walls on camera, the only other pieces that I don't have done for the set are the short walls. I was talking about last time, I ran out of spray paint to get those primed, and just haven't been back to Home Depot yet. So I might try and get out there this weekend, pick up some more Rust-Oleum, so I can get those guys started on their process. I was thinking about attempting to color match with the hobby paints that I have. Hey, good evening there. My name is Red. Out of curiosity, where are you tuning in from? Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, I'm over on the west coast of the U.S. But thankfully, my shift is fairly early in the day, so I'm done with work by 3 o'clock my time. So I'm assuming that you play if you're tuning in. Are you working on any cool projects? nice. Awesome. Space Wolves were actually my very first 40k arc. Way back in the day. That super ugly Ragnar single piece cult. I guess technically it was two pieces. The backpack was separate. Yep, that is broken. Nice. I forget who it was. I saw someone who did a conversion online where, they essentially did Space Bears, but it turned out really awesome. I need to make more wash. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I have the mental fortitude to do that much conversion work, but it was definitely an inspiration. He did an awesome job. Okay, nice, nice. I've seen some of their stuff. Yeah, they do pretty good work. So did you buy this stuff pre-printed, or did you print it out yourself? If you did, my next question is, what printer do you have? So these are they were originally in Kill Team from the Into the Dark box set, the Gallowdark scenery set. And they're using the same stuff for the boarding action mode for Warhammer now. Okay, yeah, a lot of people print and sell on XD. I love 3D printing, but I had very recently moved to the West Coast and essentially downgraded in space. So it's a little hard printing in the apartment when the other half has a sensitive nose. There we go. Let's clean up any pooling. Yeah, it is a little pricey getting into it, but I look at it as it saves me from buying models. So I'll save money in the long run. Especially on like terrain. You know, if you were going to do a whole table of terrain, you almost might as well just buy a printer. Well, mate, thanks for tuning in. You actually caught me toward the end of the process there. Well, so I'm about to sign out for the night. Um, if you enjoyed it, though, definitely give me a follow. You can also check me out on Instagram at JTS Wargaming, and also on YouTube, same handle. But thanks for tuning in, and have a great night.